So after launching innovation in schools, the work doesn't stop. Where the work shifts and transitions in some ways to sustaining innovation in schools, to thinking about how do we...
Well, we kind of tricked you with the launching phrase.
Well, or what's not a trick is to say we have to start somewhere, that things begin. But it's not one of the things that can be incredibly frustrating to teachers and people in the education community is when one thing starts and you do it for a while and you discard it, and then you start something else and you do it for a while and discard it, you start something else. And so part of what we want to be able to do is have people develop instructional improvements that they're continually building upon, that in fact we don't set it aside and discard it. We say, okay, now this is a more kind of entrenched part of our practice. This is a now more settled thing that we have, that we may decide that there's more work to be done to continue to iteratively improve it. And we may also say, now it's time to shift our focus to what the next thing looks like. I don't know if it's worth talking about a little bit, as organizations shift from launching innovation to sustaining innovation, what does some of that shift in thinking look like?
Well, first it's clarity about what it means to have accomplished something. And that's why I think what you said is right on. You've begun to embed a certain practice. It, of course, goes right back to the way we've been kind of emphasizing that all along, that this is not about what you think, it's about what you do. It's not about having a bunch of new wonderful ideas, it's about gradually developing new practices. And that's one simple way, you might say, to kind of calibrate progress over time. Well, we've established this practice, we've established this practice. Now, having said that, in a relatively short period of time, no practice is really embedded yet. So you might say we're in the beginning stages of embedding it. So one good question to ask yourself is that, well, what might it look like over the next year or so if this practice or practices we've been working on start to really get embedded? And then you're starting to calibrate that next stage. So I do think that gives a way of thinking about it that's definitely more robust, because it keeps it grounded in the doing, in the activities. And it's never over. I mean, this may or may not be what you want to hear right now, but we often say, hey, so you've accomplished this? Great. Now guess what? It'll get harder. There's a tendency to think, I don't know if this is human nature or just a massive collective conditioning, that, oh, we're going to get through this and it'll be like going to the beach and we will have done this innovation thing. No, actually, you never get it done. It never ends. But what's really exciting ultimately, and what ultimately defines the spirit, you might say it's kind of an explorer's spirit. Once you've explored this, that spirit wants to explore what's next. And so in a sense, that's really the deepest accomplishment. You've begun to implant a spirit of exploration. And that spirit doesn't want to get to the beach. It doesn't want to get it all done. It really is ready for the next challenge.
A phrase that I really like for the next challenge is the next level of work. The sense that that maybe what we're working on right now is sort of this level of work, but we always want to be attentive to what's the next level of work, that there's no room for instructional improvement to stop. We always have opportunities to continually figure out what else can I be doing to make this learning environment a richer one, a more powerful one, a more nurturing one for the students that I am working with. If you have final thoughts for the participants in the course, if you had a sort of benediction for them moving forward.
Just something that struck me as I was listening to you there, which it's sort of an obvious connection, but I'd never made it. Probably most of us as educators, if we were kind of to list what are the 5 things we most hope to instill in students. It's not this bit of knowledge or that bit of knowledge. It'll obviously be something that's more transcendent. Probably one of the things we'd all agree on is a real love of learning. Right? That we're preparing our students to be lifelong learners. Well, you just said the exact same thing for us as educators. I said, I never thought about that. How do we kind of cultivate the spirit in a school of lifelong learning? That, oh yeah, what's the next challenge? And I think, we go back to something we've said a few times. You don't teach what you know, you teach who you are. The kids are ultimately always tuning into who you are. That's the deeper learning. If we can start to build that spirit of the next challenge, that's probably the best thing we can ever do to cultivate lifelong learners.
And that seems to be connected to this idea that you've written so much about of the learning organization. That one of the features of the learning organization is that there's a whole community of people who are committed to constantly learning, that it's students, that it's teachers, that it's administrators, that it's parents. That probably one of the things that we find is that in places where there are the richest opportunities for student learning, there are also the richest opportunities for administrators to keep getting better, for the adults in the community, the teachers in the community to keep getting better. And maybe that's a good place to end, is to think about one of the sort of longer term goals of all of this work, is to say that we've created a culture that hasn't just supported this one innovation, but is really a fertile field for ongoing learning for everyone who's part of the community, from the students all the way on down and up.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's the real spirit of the enterprise that you're after. It's interesting, as you were saying that, I was thinking, here we are sitting at MIT. We can kind of almost take it for granted. But I think we are living in that sort of environment here. And you think, how did that get started? Well, there's people cultivated a certain spirit of the culture. And I mean, you're part of the Media Lab. We take people from all around the world, just have them walk in the door and they go, wow, this is really different. What's going on in here? They feel the energy right away. So I think that's what we'd, of course, love to see in every school. People walk in the door and they go, wow, what's going on in here?
Yeah.
That's a different school.
That sounds great.